It's one of the most iconic moments in the history of golf. The locale, the 18th hole on the stadium course at the Players' Championship. The opponent had won 10 of his previous 16 starts. The golf world was looking for someone who could tame a tiger.
Be the right club.
And with a 6-iron from 179, the moment was born.
Be the right club.
Welcome to the Be the Right Club Today podcast, presented by Makefield Putters.
Be the right club today.
Now, here are your hosts, Hal Sutton and Mark Greenhouse.
Welcome back to the Be the Right Club Today podcast, presented by Makefield Putters. Hal Sutton back with me this week, Mark Greenhouse. Tonight we have a special guest, Olin Browne joins us. Boys, welcome back.
Great to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Get to catch up with my old friend Olin here.
I've enjoyed playing a lot of golf with Hal. It was one of my favorite pairings, no matter where we were. We covered a lot of bases, talked about a lot of things, so this is kind of revisiting.
Yeah, Olin, we're going to get into, to start off with, the beginning of your career. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you kind of maybe were a late bloomer in terms of starting your high-level golf career.
I was grateful to be blooming at all because you're right, I started playing golf pretty late and had a lot of catching up to do. I'm playing against guys like Hal, who had grown up junior golf, major league college golf, and right to the tour and winning. If I'm not mistaken, I guess, Hal, didn't you win the PGA your rookie year?
No, my second year. I was 82 was
Second
my rookie year,
yeah.
83.
Well,
yeah.
I mean, it happened pretty quickly. You were the best player in golf right away, and so I had a lot of catching up to do, so I spent a lot of time trying to figure it out.
We all did.
What was the trigger? Were there other
We're still
sports?
trying to
figure it out. Yeah, man. Unreal.
Was there another sport that had your attention for a while, or how did the golf transition happen?
I played kind of like lower level high school sports, tennis and football, but I would consider myself a modest athlete, and I got a summer job working in a golf shop, working in the bag room actually, and golf kind of took me hard, and right away it was something that was so challenging that it just kept my attention, and I think that was part of it, right? Because it's golf. The longer you play it, there's a physical component to it, but it's really mental. The whole game is mental. Everything about it is mental, and that's why some players have bigger and better careers than others. I mean, you give everybody equivalent talent, and the guys with the stronger mind always come out on top.
I was going to say, you turned professional in '84, and your first win on what was then the Nike Tour in 1991. That's a good 7 years of the grind. Is there a point where, maybe this isn't for me, or is it, are you having enough fun out there to continue?
No, for sure. I mean, golf spends its time making you doubt what you can and can't do. I turned pro in '84. Played. The reason I ended up in Florida was in college in California. My wife and I ended up in Florida to play the Space Coast Tour. It was the only kind of developmental tour that there was anywhere. And then, of course, there was a summer kind of state open type circuit. But the truth is that Florida hosted the only developmental tour. It was the Space Coast Tour, and so I came down here. I turned pro in '84, and I started playing it. And I had to. I worked for a buddy of mine, Kenny McDonald, at the Dorset Field Club. I went up and worked for him in 1985, and I played mini tours. And my wife and I had a son in 1988, and I was ready to hang it up because it wasn't happening. I couldn't get on tour, and then the Ben Hogan Tour came about. Ended up becoming the Nike Tour and the Buy.com Tour and the National, and now it's Korn Ferry. And I had, very moderate success the first year of the tour, but then I won twice the second year and earned my status on the PGA Tour, and that's how I got out there in 1991.
and all's forgotten now. You other than the grind is what I'm saying, and you ended up making everybody realize what a great player you were.
Well, greatness is like greatness. You were great. I remember the first time I played with you. I went and watched you play when I was still in college. You played at Los Coyotes in California. I think it was the Cal State Open, and you and Freddie were paired together. And I believe you had just won the U.S. Amateur at Carolina Country Club, right? Isn't that where you won it?
Yeah,
And so I came out to watch the best players by name that I had ever heard of, and I watched you guys play that golf course. And then the first time you and I got paired was 1992, my rookie year. We played at Flint at the old Warwick Hills Country Club, where we play now the Allied Championship. And I remember that you were hitting four irons closer than I could hit an 8-iron. And I said, I got to go back to work. I got to figure this game out.
well, that was probably luck back then. I can't even remember all those things. It's so distant in my in my past. But anyway, thanks for reminding me.
Well, you're living a life of leisure. You're living a life of leisure now. You don't remember your tour days.
Hey, listen, easy going is what I like to call myself right now. Just no golf to speak of. And when I do, my expectations are very low. I played 9 holes day before yesterday, and I hit some good ones and I hit some bad ones, and I'm okay with that.
The good ones are fewer and farther between, though. Well,
Yeah.
gets harder.
Well, Olin, we go down that path. I mean, you get on the PGA Tour and, you get your breakthrough win at the Greater Hartford Open in a playoff over Stuart Sink and Larry Mize. For somebody that, you had some success on then the Nike Tour, you won 4 times out there. What does that first victory on the PGA Tour mean to you? And does it create different expectations in your mind?
It's an interesting story. And questions like this get asked. I didn't win so much that it was like it became an ordinary thing. Winning is hard for a lot of people. And so my first win validated a lot of years of doing a lot of things. And it was a pretty exciting moment, and, but the one thing that I recognized right away is that there's another tournament that begins. The tournament week really begins about 9 or 10 hours after the last putt or the last shot drops on Sunday, right? And so I had an outing to do in Providence, Rhode Island. Went down and did that on Monday, and then flew to Quad Cities and played the tournament there. And so, there wasn't a lot of time to sit back and pat myself on the back. And I got short arms anyway, so it's hard for me to get all the way back there. But it was a kind of a surreal moment. It happened, and it happened in a vacuum. And then it was on to the next week. And it was really the week off after that where my wife and kids and I got home, and we were able to kind of decompress a little bit and enjoy that moment. But, it's a fleeting feeling. You get guys clapping on the back for 2 or 3 days, and then they're trying to drum you the next week. So it doesn't last very long.
No time to celebrate, is there, Olin? Yeah.
Not really.
And both of you, I mean, Hal, you went from a win at the Memorial in '86 to the BC Open in '95, and Olin, you went from 1999 to in the MasterCard Colonial to the Deutsche Bank Championship in '05. I mean, both of you have that time frame. How much doubt creeps into you? What are you trying to do? What are you trying to accomplish? What are you trying to not do in terms of, getting back to that elite status on the PGA Tour?
It's an interesting question. You always have questions about what you're doing. In my case, the guy who I relied on to help me with my game the most passed away in 1997, and he didn't get to see my first 2 wins. But then I was in kind of the wilderness, the golf wilderness, for a long time. And I'd walk the range, and I'd watch Hal do his stuff one day, and I go, I'm going to try that. And then I'd see Tom Purchase do his thing, and I'm going to go try that. And then I'd watch some other player, and you cobble together what you can to get through the week. I was never the kind of person who said, I can't get where I want to go. I just have to find the things. I was the kind of person who said to myself that I have to find the keys that'll get me through this week. And I was really just worried about getting to the first tee on a Thursday and having something that I could rely on and something that felt good. But when you do that week to week to week to week and there's no kind of theme to it, you start picking bits and pieces, like I said, from other people's swings. And pretty soon you've got this hodgepodge of stuff in your head. And it's like a fork in the road. You get to a fork in the road, you decide whether you're going left or right. Let's say you take the left fork. For the first little bit, you can still see the right side of the road, but man, you get down that road a little ways, the right side of the road disappears, and maybe that was the one you should be on. So there's a lot of shucking and jiving in this game of golf to try and get yourself to where you can play well on a consistent basis. And the thing that really made the difference for me is I found a guy, Jim Hardy, who helped me a great deal late in my career, starting in about 2003 or 4, and I've been working with Jim ever since. And so there's continuity, there's consistent information, and I'm working, even though it's different ideas on different days, kind of towards the same direction. And I think that's where I got lost for the longest time. So like you say, from 99 to 2005, I was just going with the wind.
I think to add to what Olin said is, in the 80s, especially the late 80s, camera got really good and people started watching golf swings. And, early 80s, I don't think we concerned as much about golf swing, and we were more natural, whatever our natural was. And then all of a sudden, people think, well, if you do this, you might be better. And that is kind of the fork in the road right there. We've got to make a decision. Well, if I follow this and he's right and I'm better, well, then I'd really like that. But, as golfers, we want to be the best we can be. And sometimes we get vulnerable. If we have a few weeks where we're not playing quite as well and someone presents something that really sounds like the answer, maybe we follow it for a little bit. And that's that fork in the road that Olin was talking about. We still see the other road, but, you get down it and all of a sudden you got these monkeys in your head and you're thinking about the wrong thing all the time.
And they get to hollering, don't they?
They do get to hollering. Yes, they do. And, I spent quite a few years with those monkeys in my head and on my shoulder telling me, you need to do this or you need to do that. And I didn't know who to listen to or anything else. And, as I've said before, I got back to being who I was. I kind of pushed everybody out of the way and went back to what I knew how to do and got my game back. But
I think golfers by nature too, kind of independent and can be our own worst critics. So when things don't go according to plan, we try and figure out a way to make it to where we can manage what we need to do. And so it's kind of like a constant search. There's a never-ending. You never get to the point where you're satisfied with your game. Even like I said, you win a tournament, you got the next week coming right up on its heels right away, and it's like a whirlwind, and it never settles down. And the truth is that there's an old adage about golf, Hal, you'll back me on this, feel isn't real. And we all try and feel our way around the golf course, but fundamentals are fundamentals, and they don't necessarily apply one guy to the next. So one guy could come out, especially a fellow player, and say, hey, by the way, I see this. If you're asking me my opinion, I see this. And if you can feel like you're doing X, Y, or Z, you could really get past where you're struggling. And, that seems like a reasonable idea. I think I'll try that. Pretty soon, man, you're juggling 6 balls at once, and it just gets a little overcomplicated.
Yeah, we've all been there.
I was going to say to Olin that, your best finish on the PGA Tour in a major was the U.S. Open. And what was it like to win that major on the Champions Tour, to win the senior U.S. Open?
Well, I always felt, Mark, that my game was suited to those kinds of tournaments because I always drove the ball in play, and I was a pretty consistent iron player. I didn't hit the ball a long way, so I didn't have a lot of gaps in my game. I didn't have to find, I didn't have the kind of thing where I get an adrenaline rush and hit the ball 15 yards too far or anything like that. So those control kind of golf courses or tournaments really suited me. And even though I only finished fifth at the U.S. Open and Congressional that one year, I always felt like, I think I played 13 of them and I made the cut most of the time. And I at least had some good flashes. I was leading for a while at Oakmont in '07 and at Pinehurst in 2005. So I had some good performances. And then when I got to the Champions Tour, when you're 50, you're the youngest player out there. And I was fresh and excited about playing golf again. And the first U.S. Senior Open that we had was in Indianapolis at Crooked Stick, and I had a really good final round to finish inside the top 10, and that got me in the next year. Then I had a good week at Sahalee the next year. I finished third, played great all week. And then I was kind of like fairly listless the next year, and was just not having a great season. But I got off the plane and got on the first tee at Inverness, and the course just suited my eye. And I messed with my putter a little bit. I put some loft on it until I got it where I wanted. I didn't measure the loft. I just kept bending it until I got the ball rolling the way I wanted to. And I just had a great week. I had one of those weeks where I led wire to wire. I shot 64 the opening round. Played with Mark O'Meara on the weekend, so I had a great pairing on the weekend playing with a future Hall of Famer. We had a terrific Saturday. The two of us kind of separated ourselves from the rest of the field, and so it was essentially a match play event on Sunday. And it's not the kind of thing that you can dial up, but you got to be present when it happens. And I happened to be playing that week, and everything fell into place. I ended up winning the tournament.
That's when you had decided you came a long way, baby. That's what you dreamed about, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, when it's happening, you're so caught up in it. You're not dwelling on the outcome, right? You're dwelling on the task at hand. And everybody asks me, what was it like leading that tournament every day? I go, the first 3 days were a blast, right? But boy, I'll tell you what, I didn't sleep well on Saturday night. I was wide awake at 3 a.m, and the tension builds over the course of the week. But a lot of that tension left my body when I got to the range and hit my first couple of shots. And so, you live for those moments. You live for being uncomfortable. And then in retrospect, it's, a point of pride that I managed that situation as well as I did on that particular day and ended up winning the tournament. So a lot of fun. I'm really pleased to have that one in my quiver.
So, Mark, you probably know this. Olin's son's a really good player too. And I bet that was fun growing up playing as your son, Olin Jr., was coming up, playing great. And y'all, when he was just starting out, y'all were playing together and you watched his progress all the time. And he got to see you play the way you played. So that had to be fun to share that time together.
It was great. Every parent worth anything only cares that their kids have the greatest opportunities and the greatest chances to succeed and pursue their dreams in their lives, right? And so to be able to kind of like be with him and help share my experiences, and truthfully, he was exposed to all of the same experiences that I was because we traveled together as a family in the summertime, and when the kids were out of school, and he got to see the very best of the very best players play all over the country. And so he decided early on that he wanted to give that a shot too. And he qualified for the U.S. Open at LA Country Club in 2023, I'm thinking it was. And that was a big highlight for him because it was kind of validation for all the hard work. Now he's played the Korn Ferry for a couple of years and he's had moderate success, but for him to get into the national championship of golf was a big deal, and it was great for me as a father to see him be able to achieve that and see the expression on his face when he was standing on the first tee, because I know exactly how he was feeling, right? He was sticking that peg in the ground. His fingers weren't feeling right. His legs weren't feeling too stable, but he still had a great week, and so it's just great to be able to be part of that as a parent and see kids live out their dreams.
Well, and speaking of LA Country Club, we got Wyndham Clark winning that. A couple weeks ago, we got Wyndham Clark winning the U.S. Open again, but the crowd was against him. You always seem to be the guy that when you popped up on a leaderboard, for me at least as a fan, in underdog status, I always felt like that there was a group of people out there that were always rooting for the underdog, and you seem to fit that bill. Did you get a sense of that when you were in contention?
Well, you get a sense of pretty much everything that happens in the crowd when you're in contention. I don't know that it affects play an awful lot. It kind of between greens and tees, maybe you get a little bit more of it. But when we're in on the golf course and in between the ropes, you're pretty well insulated from it. Now, crowds have gotten a little bit more vocal or a little bit more enthusiastic, let's call it, as of late. Everybody's working on getting clicks and getting themselves in the spotlight and all this kind of stuff. And the truth is, and I don't know where you guys stand on this, but golf always, to me, one of the great things about golf is it set a standard. It set a standard of conduct for the players, for the fans, the game in general. And I see that kind of diminishing a little bit. Some of the things we've seen in Ryder Cup the last few years, certainly last year at Bethpage, was unfortunate. And hey, I don't know if it's a coincidence that Shinny was hosting the U.S. Open and it was the Long Island thing or what, but I, I'm one of the kinds of people that I think that the game ought to dictate the what's happening, and I don't think it's a great thing when the fans decide that they want to get involved in the outcome of things.
I couldn't agree with you more, Olin. One of the things that I always loved about traditional golf is they appreciated good shots and they didn't applaud bad shots. Everybody out there, they knew that golf was hard and that people make mistakes. And, the professionals make fewer of them, but we still made mistakes. And, I don't like where golf is headed. That was one of the questions I was going to ask you. What do you think the state of the game is right now? And I think you just gave us a little glimpse into what you think.
Wow. You and I have been having this conversation for 20 years.
Yeah.
Since we served on the board together. I think that it's important. Look, the two, in my opinion, the two finest sporting events are the Masters and Wimbledon. They've got tradition, they've got style, they've got codes of conduct, they've got history, they got legacy, they got everything. And it's not forced, but it's enforced. And I think there's a lot of value in that. Look, you try and teach your kids values. You expect them to adhere to standards. And then, I think it's reasonable to expect that the game should set standards as well. And golf is one of those kind of games that it's a high wire act. It's a solo operation. Tennis is very similar, although you have a direct opponent across the net. But golf, there's a golf ball, there's a stick in your hand, and there's information between you and your caddy. And then the rest of it is what can you do with it? And I think that that's what separates it from a lot of other sports. It's what makes it so great. It's what makes it so difficult. But it's what makes it so great. And so I just, what? Is the tour going in a direction that I'm in favor of? I'm not privy to the conversations that are happening behind the scenes, but I can't see the reason why the current player should have an equity stake in what's happening going forward. I don't, they haven't earned that. They're part of. If you go back just to 1968 when the PGA Tour was founded, the PGA Tour, not the PGA of America and its affiliation, but the PGA Tour, that's roughly 60 years of competitive, highly competitive professional golf. And we're talking about legacies built with Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Tiger Woods, Hal Sutton, Johnny Miller, Tom Weiss. I mean, the legacies are intact because they stand relative to everybody else's play in that context. Now we're changing all that. And this whole live thing is a cherry bomb that was thrown in the middle of a lake and is causing all kinds of upheaval in golf. And what's the response to that? I don't know, but to turn the thing upside down and change every format distances our game from the history of it. And I think that the history of this game is one of the strongest assets that we have. If you eliminate that, you disengage from the foundations and the foundational principles of the whole thing. And where that leads is an unknown for sure. It could work out, but I don't know, and when you don't know, I think it's reasonable to question it.
Well, Olin, you mentioned that we were on the board together, and if you recall, the biggest thing that we were talking about at that time as a tour was charity wins. And I've brought this up on here many times. We hardly ever hear the word charity on anything on the tour anymore, and that disappoints me. We all worked for charity to be the winner.
And we all participated in it, right? I mean, everybody's got their causes. Everybody's got what they do. I'm sporting the Folds of Honor right now. You can see it right there.
Mm-hmm. Yep, there you go.
It's not just the concept of charity. It's the after a practice round going down to St. Jude and hanging with the kids, or the years and years and years of the relationship between Colonial, which has its own legacy, and Cook Children's in Fort Worth, right, or St. Jude's in Memphis, or any myriad of other charitable components and communities that have been intertwined over the 60 years that the PGA Tour has had a relationship with those towns. And when you go back to the same town and somebody comes up and shakes your hand and says, it's great to see you again, that's their 1 week out of 52. It's 1 week out of 30 that we travel around the tour, but they're 1 week out of 52 where the tour is coming back to town. And you see those people that have, the hat with the buttons or the autographs, or there's one gentleman at Endicott, New York, who's been going for 57 years, and he brings out a cowboy hat and gets everybody in the field to sign that cowboy hat. And I asked him this year, I go, how many of those have you got? He says, this is my 57th. I go, you need to call a Hall of Fame and send it down there and put it on display. He's got 57 years of getting autographs on the PGA Tour and the PGA Tour champions. I mean, you can't pay for that. No. And I think that the mistake that we're maybe making is that we think we can pay for anything, and we can't. You can't buy that kind of loyalty, and you can't buy that kind of commitment, and you can't buy that kind of interaction with people. And that's the only way that happens is over the course of time.
That's a good spot. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back on the Be the Right Club Today podcast presented by Makefield Putters. And I want to remind everybody, in fact, about our sponsor, Makefield Putters, made right here in the USA. Go out to makefieldgolf.com. You can check out all the different styles, but they all have one thing in common. The radial cusp technology helps you get an equator strike, reduces the skid effect. You can personalize it. They've got the weight system. And Hal, our man Todd Burrell down at Carolina Lakes here in the Charlotte area, I was down there last week. I got to try the new blade putter from Makefield. I messed around with some of the weights, got a little more weight in the toe because I do have a tendency to do a little toe pull. And once I got the weights straightened out, man, even when I felt like I kind of came over the top of it and pulled it left, that thing rolled straight because the weight in the toe was delaying the hit a little bit. And that's just a great feeling putter.
Well, it's no more than I play golf. Putting is probably one of the best parts of my game right now. So it's worked for me so far.
I also want to remind everybody about Peak Vision. See like you've never seen before with Peak Vision sunglasses. The difference is immediate. Get ready for the season and use the code GS15 at peakvision.com. Again, that's promo code GS15. And for all of our podcast watchers and listeners, make sure that you go out to BeTheRightClubToday.com. Check out all the podcasts with myself and Hal and Todd and Hal. And if you get a chance, there's a shop out there. You can get your own merchandise with our man Hal right on your favorite piece of clothing. So, Olin, make sure you go out there and get some Hal silhouettes out there. So
I'm on it.
We got some good stuff.
You hit at least 18 putts around, more like low 30s. So you better make sure you got the right putter in your hand. And I don't think people have spent enough time trying to make sure they have that. Hi, I'm Hal Sutton. 25 years ago, I had the right club at the right moment, and it made a huge difference. Today, I've teamed up with Makefield Putters. I now use the right putter today. You see, Makefield has unique radial cusp technology. The ball releases faster off the face and keeps the ball rolling more on its axis. The result is a straighter putt, more on target. When you get everything just right, the putter that fits you just right, the one that you believe in, your confidence should be oozing out of you. So I would encourage all consumers, go to the Makefield website and educate yourself and get fitted correctly, get the right putter in your hand, and there's hope for better putting ahead.
Golf is challenging enough. Between the sandbagging bandits, the wind, rain, and your homemade swing, it sometimes feels impossible. You need a legal 15th club. You need Peak Vision sunglasses. 4 to 5 hours of protection against glare and ultraviolet light with clarity as clear as crown glass. That's Peak Vision sunglasses, your secret 15th club, giving you one less obstacle to overcome. Just one try is all it takes, and the price is less than national brands. Use the code GS15 at peakvision.com. Welcome back to the Be the Right Club Today podcast presented by Makefield Putters. Hal Sutton, Mark Greenhalgh. Guest tonight is Olin Browne. We were talking about the history of the game, Olin, and we have the Open Championship this week, and hopefully for the British golf fans, now that their football club has been eliminated in the World Cup, they're going to be pulling for their boys to win the Open Championship. You never did get to play in the Open Championship, did you?
No, I was always playing the opposite field event, which was either the BC Open or the tournament in Milwaukee. So I played several of them over there on the Champions Tour. But Birkdale is one that I missed because I had a stress fracture in my back, so I don't have a lot to contribute to the condition of the course or information about the course. But I know that they're playing true Open Championship conditions this week because the thing is cooked, right? They've had a hot summer, a dry summer, and that ball, it's amazing when the ball starts bouncing and rolling, how many times it finds those holes in the ground that they call bunkers over there. I think, and especially at Birkdale, because the bunkering is pretty intimidating. I think we're going to see the better drivers of the ball have a better week over there, and I'm looking forward to watching. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year to watch golf.
Now, Hal, you said that you felt like that one of the European players was going to win it for that sheer fact that this is going to be on the ground links style golf, and that's where their advantage kicks in. And and we've talked about this a lot, is that when you look at the U.S. players, they've won a lot of times over there recently, but they haven't had these kind of conditions. I don't remember seeing these conditions in a while, and that's going to change the dynamic of this event.
Well, that's why I think they have the advantage, because these guys grew up in these conditions to some degree. They played it certainly more than the American players have. And that doesn't always mean that they're going to win, but they certainly will know what to expect. And, the American players, some of them are really playing well right now, and they might learn on the fly, basically. And, I played several tournaments where I didn't think I had much of a chance going into it, and somehow something happens early in the round of the first round, and things start feeling like pretty good, and it's going your way, and next thing you know, you're feeling like you're a contender. So that might happen too over there. But, I say all the time, Americans would be better players if we played a better variety of golf courses. And, I tried, Olin, you might have been on the board when I was pushing for this. I wanted the tour to hire an ex-tour player to go out and set up all of the tournaments. And I said I wanted 25% of the tournaments to be like U.S. Open style. I wanted 25% of them to be would favor a longer hitter, and 25% of them would favor an accurate player, so that we would get a variety of different players winning tournaments. And I didn't get to first base with it, but I wanted to see if we could build more complete players.
It was probably your
And-
delivery system.
Well, it probably was my delivery system, but anyway, I felt like
Hal, you make an interesting point. And I think you can point to equipment in a lot of ways for creating, like there's certainly a modern game, and they post it every day. You watch a golf tournament, and every single player has a ball speed of 174 miles an hour, which means the ball's carrying 300. Golf courses have been made obsolete. Equipment is such that everybody plays the same style of game. The ball doesn't curve much. Guys basically aim at their target and hit at their target. The guys who move the ball significantly, I mean, the last guy who really shaped his ball a lot was Bubba Watson that I can think of. And so styles of play, it used to be horses for courses, didn't it? I mean,
Right.
you take a Lauren Roberts every day and all day long at Harbor Town, and you take a Hal Sutton every day, all day long at a golf course where you had to drive your ball 280 down the middle of every fairway, and you take Jack where you could, where a bomber had an advantage. But those kinds of differences in style don't really exist any longer. And it's really about, if everybody's hitting the ball 330 yards, they don't make a par five anymore, right? I mean, you got to make them 700 yards, which they just don't exist. And I turn on the TV and here I am, it's 196 yards, a little downwind, and they're telling me the guy's got 9-iron in his hands. I mean, it's just, the game has turned into a joke anymore. And so I would love to see him drop, a circa 1985 Bellata ball on the first tee and have everybody pick a dozen balls and go play golf, and let's see what happens, because it would be a whole different outcome.
Well, one of the things that I think, this year, Rory hit an 8-iron into 13 at Augusta. And, trees are a big part of a golf course. Trees keep long hitters from taking advantage of it. And They're cutting down all the trees everywhere, except at Augusta. I mean, there's fewer and fewer trees on a golf course. And, everything lends itself to as far as you can hit it. And to your point, Olin. So.
And they do. And it's a talent as well. But if you put spin back on the ball, downwind, those guys would hit it 8 miles, but into the wind, who knows who'd find it. And that'd be the key to the game, right? And that's the way it used to be. Look, that's why Jack hit 3-woods going downwind on the par fives, because he could get that 3-wood to launch a little higher, and that thing could slipstream and go out there 320. Okay, great. But into the wind, everybody would have to hit a whole different kind of a shot. And that is the kind of thing that we've lost, because golf balls are so good now and equipment is so good. Guys can tee it down and hit a knuckle bleeder out there that still goes 300. And that's just changed shot making, shot values, styles of play. I think it happens in every sport. John McEnroe was a great competitor. You're never going to see another tennis player like John McEnroe. You probably never see another one like Corey Pavin in golf, because there's just no room for it anymore.
Well,
That's
I've advocated on here a lot about put spin back on the golf ball. We'd see a whole different ball game. I mean, there's not a harder shot in the world than the third shot if you lay up on 15 when it's into the wind. That's the hardest shot in golf right there.
You got a downhill lie. You don't know what kind of spin is coming out of that shot. The trajectory is everything, and spin control once it hits the green, right? And those kinds of things aren't a factor anymore.
Exactly.
Well, Olin, before we let you go, what's keeping you busy right now down there in Florida?
I've got my metal detector, and I'm working the beach right now. I'm looking for loose change. I'll go out and go fishing tomorrow. Hanging out at home. My wife and I cruise up and down the beach, and we hang out with our grandkids. We have a great time with them. My grandkids both love sports. They're into every sport imaginable, so we're at every game that we can go to. And they're starting to get into golf, and they got a little bit of the craze. And I was thinking about actually hanging it up, and my eldest grandson called me up one day and said, "Papa, would you come take me to play golf tomorrow?" And what time would you like me to pick you up? So it's a different stage of life, but I'm really enjoying it. I'm going to miss, I miss hanging out with Hal. Hal and I used to spend a lot of time playing golf, talking about golf, having lunch here and there. And he's one of the good minds in golf. I've always admired Hal as a player, but as a person too. He always had a great perspective on things. And if he could get over his fear of communicating his thoughts and feelings to people, he'd do a lot better job. But we miss you out there, Hal, and I'm going to be able to say the same thing about when I move on too.
Well, Olin, I always enjoyed all of our conversations and all of our rounds of golf together, and I was really looking forward to you being on the podcast tonight, just because you've got a great perspective. And I'm going to go back and repeat something you said. I've never heard this said before, and when you said it, I thought, wow, that was brilliant. It's a high wire act. Being a professional golfer is a high wire act. You feel alone. You feel like everybody's watching you, and they're wondering if you're going to fall. And that's what being a professional golfer feels like. So,
you do fall. You wipe out. It's like Evel Knievel,
Yeah.
It sure is fun, though.
I've had that wipe out. Yeah. It's been great talking, Olin. Thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me. It's great visiting with you again. Mark, thanks so much. Good to be with you.
Yeah, Olin, thank you very much. And Hal, you'll be back with me in a couple weeks. Todd Burrell will be back on the show with me next week, and we'll see what Todd and I can get ourselves into. Probably an Open Championship wrap-up. And I want to remind everybody about our title sponsor, Makefield Putters. And again, thanks, guys. And that is the Be the Right Club Today podcast presented by Makefield Putters.
Thank you for listening to Be the Right Club Today with your host, Hal Sutton and Mark Greenhalgh. Presented by Makefield Putters.
The preceding episode was a production of Moonlight Media Works in association with Walk Marketing.